Have you ever lost someone who loved you deeply and only realized their value after they were gone? Not the loud person, not the dramatic person, not the person who constantly threatened to leave, the quiet one, the one who understood you better than you understood yourself, the one who kept forgiving things most people would never forgive. And one day, they simply stopped. No fight, no explosion, no warning that you could recognize, just silence. And by the time you understood what that silence meant, it was already too late. Today, we're exploring one of the most misunderstood psychological truths about human relationships. What happens when a deeply perceptive person finally stops giving their heart to someone who never truly valued it? And why the regret that follows can haunt people for years. Stay with me, because the final story reveals something so powerful that it changed the way psychologists understand emotional attachment itself. Years ago, author and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl met countless people whose psychological endurance seemed almost impossible to explain. Inside concentration camps, Frankl noticed something unusual. Some individuals endured unimaginable suffering longer than anyone expected, not because they were physically stronger, not because they were luckier, but because they believed their pain still had meaning. Frankl later wrote extensively about this observation. Meaning gave people strength. Meaning helped them tolerate what should have broken them. And strangely enough, the exact same principle appears in relationships. Many emotionally sensitive people remain in painful relationships for the same reason. Not because they enjoy suffering, not because they have low self-worth, but because they believe the pain means something. They believe the other person is wounded, misunderstood, lost, recoverable. They keep seeing potential long after reality begins telling a different story. This happened repeatedly throughout Frankl's own life after the war. He often spoke about the human tendency to search for meaning, even in situations where evidence suggests there may be none. Psychologically, this is called meaning-making. It is one of the most beautiful capacities of the human mind, and one of the most dangerous. Because once a person becomes attached to someone's potential, they can begin overlooking that person's actual behavior. Every broken promise becomes understandable. Every emotional absence gets explained away. Every disappointment receives another chance. Months become years. Years become emotional exhaustion. Then something changes. Not suddenly, quietly. The meaning disappears. And once meaning disappears, endurance usually follows. That moment is often mistaken for coldness. In reality, it is clarity. Psychologists have observed that people rarely leave when they stop loving. They leave when they stop believing change is coming. That distinction matters, because when hope dies, attachment begins to loosen. And when attachment loosens, the exit has already begun. A few decades ago, one of the most famous relationship researchers in the world began studying married couples. His name was Dr. John Gottman. What made his work remarkable was accuracy. His research team could often predict divorce years before it happened, not from dramatic arguments, not from explosive conflicts, but from tiny behavioral shifts. One couple especially fascinated his team. From the outside, everything looked stable. No screaming, no major scandals, no public chaos. Friends assumed they were fine. Then the marriage ended. People were shocked. But Gottman's recordings revealed something important. Months before separation, one partner had slowly stopped making emotional bids. A bid is a small attempt to connect. Sharing a joke, mentioning something interesting, pointing out a beautiful sunset, sending a random message during the day. These moments seem insignificant, yet they are the invisible threads holding relationships together. The emotionally aware partner kept reaching for connection, again and again and again. The responses became shorter, less engaged, less curious. Eventually, the bid stopped. Then came silence. The other partner interpreted that silence as peace. Everything seemed calmer, fewer complaints, less emotional discussion, less tension, relief. But psychologically, something devastating had happened. The relationship was no longer healing. It was dying, quietly. Researchers discovered that emotional withdrawal is often mistaken for emotional stability. People think, we're not fighting anymore. What they fail to notice is that they're no longer connecting either. This is one of the most dangerous misunderstandings in human relationships, because emotional distance rarely arrives as a dramatic event. It arrives as the absence of hundreds of tiny moments, moments nobody notices until they are gone. When the marriage finally ended, one partner appeared surprisingly calm. Friends couldn't understand it. How could someone move on so quickly? The answer was simple. The grieving had already happened. Months earlier, maybe years earlier, by the time the separation became official, the emotional processing was already complete. This is why deeply perceptive people often seem strong after endings. The public ending is not their beginning. It is their conclusion. The storm happened privately, long before anyone noticed clouds. In the late 20th century, researchers studying attachment and emotional intelligence became fascinated by an unusual pattern. Certain individuals repeatedly transformed the emotional lives of everyone around them, not through advice, not through authority, but through attention. One of the clearest examples emerged from the life of renowned therapist Carl Rogers. Throughout his career, Rogers became famous for a concept called unconditional positive regard. People described conversations with him as life-changing, not because he gave magical solutions, but because he listened with extraordinary depth. People felt seen, really seen, for perhaps the first time. Many former clients described realizing truths about themselves simply because Rogers created an environment where honesty felt safe. Here's what makes this psychologically important. The deepest value some people bring into our lives is not what they do. It is how they see us. And most people do not recognize that value until it disappears. When someone consistently understands your fears, recognizes your emotional patterns, sees the difference between who you pretend to be and who you actually are, they become a psychological mirror. And mirrors are easy to take for granted until they are gone. Then suddenly you realize something. You don't miss the attention. You miss being understood. Those are not the same thing. Attention can be found anywhere. Understanding is rare, very rare. Many people spend years moving from relationship to relationship, searching for the same feeling. They think they're looking for love. Often, they're looking for recognition, for someone who truly sees them. The tragedy is that this realization frequently arrives too late. Only after the person who offered that understanding has finally chosen themselves. And here's the extraordinary twist. When deeply perceptive people stop investing all their awareness in fixing others, their lives begin changing dramatically. They start noticing their own patterns, their own needs, their own neglected emotions. Instead of asking, "How can I save this person?" they begin asking, "Why am I abandoning myself?" That question changes everything, because true emotional maturity is not loving others less. It is finally extending the same compassion inward, the same patience, the same understanding, the same loyalty. When that happens, boundaries appear. Not walls, boundaries. A wall says nobody gets in. A boundary says the right people are welcome. The difference is profound. And once a person learns that lesson, their peace becomes non-negotiable. Their presence becomes more valuable. Their relationships become healthier, and their life becomes dramatically more intentional. The people who once underestimated them often find themselves looking back, not because they were perfect, but because genuine emotional depth is rare, and rare things become obvious only after they disappear. So if you recognize yourself in today's video, remember this: your sensitivity is not your weakness. Your depth is not your flaw. Your capacity to understand people is not a burden. The real challenge is learning where that gift belongs. Because the moment you start offering yourself the same understanding you've spent years giving everyone else, everything changes. And the people who truly deserve you will finally have the opportunity to meet the real version of you, not the exhausted version, not the self-sacrificing version, the authentic one, the strongest version of all. Before you go, here's a question for you. Have you ever realized the value of someone only after they quietly walked away? Or have you been the person who finally chose to leave? Share your experience in the comments. Your story may help someone else see what they still have before it's too late. Before you go, the darkness didn't just change you, it revealed a power most people never awaken. But there's a deeper truth behind that transformation. It's on your screen right now. The rare power only a broken empath awakens after surviving the darkness. Click and discover what your pain may have been preparing you for all along. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.